new article from the Wall Street Journal is prompting discussion about the potential dangers of ADHD medication.
The article profiles several kids and young adults who were diagnosed with ADHD at a young age and details the drawbacks that came with the drugs they were prescribed. It reads in part, quote, about 7.1 million American children ages 3 to 17 have an ADHD diagnosis, according to an analysis of 2022 federal data. About half took ADHD medication for it that year, and prescriptions are growing. Children who were prescribed a medication for ADHD were more likely to take additional psychiatric drugs over the ensuing 4 years. Clinical trials have shown ADHD drugs, among them stimulants such as Ritalin and Adderall, are safe and effective for many patients, but less is known about the impact of multiple psychiatric drugs on young children.
The article spread quickly online, with many people expressing outrage. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis weighed in, asking, didn't kids do just fine in the days before it was the norm to pump them with pills? And author Alex Berenson writes, the two most deceptive words in the English language are ADHD drugs. We need to call them what they are every single time. Amphetamines. You aren't giving your kids ADHD medicine, you're giving them amphetamines, among the most addictive and dangerous drugs around.
A few months ago, Stanford Medicine published a study arguing that ADHD should be treated with behavioral therapy first before moving on to medication. The study's lead author says, quote, we found that many young children are being prescribed medications very soon after their diagnosis of ADHD is documented. That's concerning because we know starting ADHD treatment with behavioral approach is beneficial. It has a big positive effect on the child as well as on the family.
I feel this is the kind of thing that makes me feel like a radical, because it makes me so angry. There's been several research studies and reports, including one in the New York Times a few years back, that talked about the potential dangers of putting kids on ADHD medication, SSRIs, and found that it didn't really help their outcomes. In fact, a lot of them ended up on even more drugs than when they started. And I talked to a lot of parents, around the country, but specifically in the DMV area. And this is a particular problem, it seems, with young boys who, at the age of 3, 4, 5 are rambunctious, right? Have a lot of energy, I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
And they get into this very rigid school environment and they get bored and they start acting out. And the conclusion is not that they need to be better engaged while in school. It's, well, we need to put them on medicine. We need to give them a pill to make them calm down. And this sort of reflexive way of reacting to issues with children by medicalizing it, I think is going to cause a lot of great damage to our young people. And I'm very, very concerned about it.
Yeah, I'm hesitant about this because obviously I'm not a doctor. And so I know that medicine can be life-changing for some kids, and that people that I know with children that have been diagnosed with ADHD might use one of the medicines and find that in certain situations and when they decide to administer it with the supervision of their doctor, it has been helpful. But at the same time, as a mom, I can speak to it and say that if Kinsley ever was in a situation where that was advised by a doctor, I would always go for the behavioral therapy or the conversations first, as suggested by a lot of this research that we're seeing. I know that 1 in 5 children on ADHD ends up on multiple medicines, and that's the issue
crazy.
for me, because some of those lead to even deeper psych medicines down the line, which I think nobody should be addicted to different pills to help them get out of in a feeling or state of being. And I also get very hesitant about those joyful, gleeful children that I see full of life that just turn kind of quiet and sit still. And I've seen the reaction of it, that just, they're like a shell of themselves.
Yes.
And to me, the best thing I could do as a mom is to encourage and enhance my daughter Kinsley to be her most vibrant self, so that she can figure out what that looks like as she turns into a vibrant adult and how that turns up in the world. And I think part of that could look like stifling if I'm like, oh, that's too much, or this is too, because maybe it's not too much, maybe she just needs to learn differently. And so I know even as I'm going through this process about schooling, there are different types of schools for children that maybe if your kid is more of like not a rigid schedule person, especially in DC, I find that it's really open-minded about the different variety of schools, all to get to the same end game, that you can still learn. But I think also a big thing for me, and this comes up a lot for young Black boys, is distinguishing between ADHD as a problem and actual trauma or stress that's in the home, or normal preschool behavior. Because if there's any incidence, and I'm only saying Black boys because it's higher in communities of color, the trauma and stress that may be attached to their lifestyles, but any young boy in that instance, when I look at studies, I don't want to misdiagnose kids because they're dealing with something at home. Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes because we have doctors that maybe, and this is not blanket statement, but maybe they're trying to get through their day and quickly prescribe, or even schools, districts that don't know how to deal with them. So they send them to the nurse or to the psychologist on site at the school and quickly want to prescribe. They're not taking the time out to say, well, this kid is acting out because he's having trouble at home. And that leads to a variety and a slew of issues, not only just saying they have ADHD. So I think if we had the care and the time and the resources, some of that comes with schools that are underfunded. So they don't have the resources to take the time out with each kid, which is also unfortunate when they're dealing with things like overpacked classrooms and things like that. But I do think that we should not be quickly saying that all these things, because they're signs of ADHD, are ADHD when they could be signs of trauma and stress.
Yeah, there's definitely this feeling over the past decade or so that doctors are more quick to prescribe medicine for perceived behavioral issues or mood changes. And just as a personal anecdote, when my dad passed away, someone convinced me to go to therapy. Horrible idea. Anyway, I went, and the first meeting, I sit down. Within 2 minutes, the therapist says, well, are you sad? Well, yeah, obviously. I'm grieving. And he goes, do you think you need to be on antidepressants?
Oh, really?
And I was like, I'm not the doctor here. I don't think that's within my purview to say whether or not, but also I'm pretty sure I'm just sad.
Yeah,
I don't
naturally.
think I'm depressed. And to me, it was so disturbing. I couldn't take it seriously from then on out. But
I think we talked about schooling, there's different types of therapy too. Because I've done therapy a variety of times, mm-hmm. and in different states, because sometimes when you have a therapist in a state, you can't carry them over. And I kept getting new jobs in new states. They can't practice in certain states. And so if I got a new therapist, some of them I would run away from immediately because I know I don't want any medicine, right? But some of them I would be like, okay, you do this type of therapy where you want to talk about the past to connect it to my present, or some of them just will talk about right now. Whatever it is, it might not work for you, but it's the ones that prescribe medicines, like my friends have told me that, oh, I went to this therapy, she gave me this. That to me is the quickest Band-Aid. And again, I'm not a doctor, but that's a red flag to me also.
Yeah, I mean, you're not getting to the root of the problem. You're just trying to medicate your way out of it. And people who have been on these psychoactive drugs like Prozac, SSRIs, whatever, when they try to get off of them, the withdrawal symptoms are incredibly intense, and can take years to taper off with the doctor's assistance. And they end up feeling suicidal when they're coming off of these drugs because of how much it has affected their brain chemistry. I'm very, very worried about this for the little ones.
Yeah.
Next up on Rising, there's a sweater that's sparking a culture war online. We'll talk about it after this.